Chapter 48, or Book 3, Part 19, The Subterranean Labyrinth, Cinnamon's Two Doors.
There's a computer in that house, isn't there, Mr. Okada? I don't know who's using it, though,
said Ushikawa. It was 9 o'clock at night, and I was sitting at the kitchen table, with the phone to my hand. There is, I said, and left it at that. Ushikawa made a sniffling sound.
I know that much from my usual snooping, he said. Of course, I'm not saying anything one way or another about the fact that you've got a computer there. Nowadays, anybody doing any kind of brain work has to have a computer. There's nothing weird about it. To make a long story short, though, the idea kind of hit me that it might be good if I could contact you through the computer. So I looked into it, but damn, it's a hell of a lot more complicated than I imagined. Just calling up an ordinary phone line wouldn't make the connection. Plus, you need a special password for access. No password, and the door doesn't budge. That did it for me.
I kept silent.
Now don't get me wrong, Mr. Okada. I'm not trying to crawl inside a computer and fool around in there. I don't have anything like that in mind. With all the security you've got in place, I couldn't pull data out even if I wanted to. No, that was never an issue. All I have in mind is trying to set up a conversation between you and Miss Kumiko. I promised you I'd do that. Remember? That I'd do what I could to help you and her talk to each other directly. It's been a long time since she left her house, and it's a bad idea to leave things hanging like this. The way it stands now, your life is probably just going to get weirder and weirder. It's always best for people to talk to each other face to face, to open themselves up. Otherwise, misunderstandings are bound to arise, and misunderstandings make people unhappy. Anyhow, that's how I tried to appeal to Miss Kumiko. I did everything I could. But I just couldn't get her to agree. She insisted she wouldn't talk to you directly, not even on the phone, since face-to-face meeting was out of the question. Not even on the phone. I was ready to give up. I tried every trick in the book, but her mind was made up like a rock.
Ushikawa paused for me to react, but I said nothing.
Still, I couldn't just take her at her word and back off. Dr. Wataya would really give it to me if I started acting like that. The other person can be a rock or a wall, but I'll find that one tiny point of compromise. That's our job, finding that point of compromise. If they won't sell you the refrigerator, make them sell you some ice. So I racked my brains trying to find some way to pull this off. Let me tell you, that's what makes us human, coming up with a million different ideas. So all of a sudden, a good one popped into my foggy brain, like a star showing through a streak in the clouds. That's it, I told myself. Why not have a conversation on computer screens? You know, put words on the screen with a keyboard? You can do that, can't you, Mr. Okada?
I had used a computer when I worked in the law firm, researching precedents, looking up personal data for clients, and communicating with email. Kumiko had also used computers at work. The health food magazines she edited had computer files on recipes and nutritional analysis.
It don't work on just any old computer, continued Ushikawa. But with our machine and yours, you ought to be able to communicate at a pretty fast pace. Miss Kumiko says she's willing to talk with you that way. It was as much as I could get her to bend. Trading messages real time, it would almost be like talking to each other. That's the one last point of compromise I could come up with, squeezing wisdom out of a monkey. What do you say? You may not be too crazy about the idea, but I literally put my brains on the rack for that one. Let me tell you, it's tiring work thinking that hard with brains you don't even have.
I silently shifted the receiver to my left hand.
Hello, Mr. Okada. Are you listening?
I'm listening, I said.
All right then. The one thing I need from you is the password to access your computer. Then I can set up a conversation between you and Miss Kumiko. What do you say?
I'd say there are some practical problems standing in the way.
Oh? And what might those be?
Well, first of all, how can I be sure the other person is Kumiko? When you're talking on the computer screen, you can't see the other people's faces or hear their voices. Someone else could be sitting at the keyboard pretending to be Kumiko.
I see what you mean, said Ushikawa, seemingly impressed. I never thought of that, but I'm sure there must be some way around it. Not to flatter you, but it's good to view things with skepticism, to have your doubts. I doubt, therefore I am. Alright then, how about this? You start out by asking a question that only Miss Kumiko would know the answer to. If the other person can come up with the answer, it must be Kumiko. I mean, you lived together as man and wife for several years. There must be a few things that only the two of you would know.
What Ushikawa was saying made sense. That would probably work, I said, but I don't know the password. I've never touched that machine. Nutmeg had told me that Cinnamon had customized every inch of the computer system. He had compiled his own complex database and protected it from the outside access with a secret code and other ingenious devices. Fingers on the keyboard, Cinnamon was absolute ruler over the three-dimensional subterranean labyrinth. He knew every one of its intertwined passages and could leap from one to another with the stroke of a key. For an uninformed invader, which is to say anyone but Cinnamon, to grope his way through the labyrinth, past the alarms and traps, to where important data lay, would have taken months, according to Nutmeg. Not that the computer installed in the residence was especially big. It was the same class of machine as the one in the Akasaka office. Both were hardwired to the mainframe they had at home, though. There, Cinnamon no doubt stored their client data and did their complex double bookkeeping. But I imagined that he kept something more in there than the secrets connected with the work that he and Nutmeg had done over the years. What led me to believe this was the depth of the commitment to his machine that Cinnamon displayed on occasion when he was in our special residence. He normally stayed shut up in the small office he had there, but every now and then he would leave the door ajar, and I was able to observe him at work, not without a certain guilty sense of invading someone's privacy. He and his computer seemed to be moving together in an almost erotic union. After a burst of strokes on the keyboard, he would gaze at the screen, his mouth twisted in apparent dissatisfaction, or curled with the suggestion of a smile. Sometimes he seemed deep in thought as he touched one key, then another, and sometimes he ran his fingers over the keys with all the energy of a pianist playing a Liszt etude. As he engaged in silent conversation with his machine, he seemed to be peering through the screen of his monitor into another world, with which he shared a special intimacy. I couldn't help but feel that reality resided for him not so much in the earthly world, but in his subterranean labyrinth. Perhaps in that world, Cinnamon had a clear, ringing voice, with which he spoke eloquently and laughed and cried aloud. "Can't I access your computer from the one here?" I asked Ushikawa. "Then you wouldn't need a password."
No, that wouldn't work. Your transmissions might reach here, but transmissions from here wouldn't reach there. The problem is the password, the open sesame. Without that, there's nothing we can do. The door won't open for the wolf, no matter how hard he tries to disguise his voice. He can knock and say, "Hi, it's me, your friend Rabbit." But if he hasn't got the password, he gets turned away at the door. We're talking about an Iron Maiden here.
Ushikawa struck a match at its end and lit a cigarette. I pictured his snaggle yellow teeth and drooping mouth.
It's a 3-character alphanumeric password. You have 10 seconds to input it after the prompt shows. Get it wrong 3 times and access is denied. Plus the alarm goes off. Not that there are any sirens that ring or anything, but the wolf leaves his footprints, so you know he was there. Clever, huh? If you calculate all possible permutations and combinations of the 26 letters and 10 numbers, it's practically infinite. You just have to know the password, or there's nothing you can do.
I thought this over for a time without replying.
Any good ideas, Mr. Okada?
After the client was driven away in the black backseat of the Mercedes the following afternoon, I walked into Cinnamon's small office, sat down in front of his computer, and flipped the switch. The cool blue light of the monitor came on with a simple message. Enter password within 10 seconds. I put the 3-letter word that I had prepared. Zoo. The computer beeped once and displayed an error message. Incorrect password. Enter password within 10 seconds. The 10 seconds started counting down on the screen. I changed to the uppercase and input the same letters. ZOO. Again, I was refused access. Incorrect password. Enter correct password within 10 seconds. If incorrect password is input once more, access will automatically be denied. Again, the 10 seconds began counting down on the screen. This time, I made only the Z uppercase. It was my last chance. Capital ZOO. Instead of an error message, the menu screen opened with the instruction, choose one of the following programs. I released a long, slow breath, then began scrolling through the long list of programs until I came to communication software. Highlighting this, I pressed the mouse button. Choose one of the following programs. I chose chat mode and clicked the mouse. Enter password within 10 seconds. This was an important junction for Cinnamon to lock out the access to his computer. And if the junction was important, the password itself ought to be important. I typed in capital SUB. The screen read, incorrect password. Input correct password within 10 seconds. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. I tried the combination of upper and lowercase letters that had worked the first time. Capital SUB. A prompt flashed on the screen. Input telephone number. I folded my arms and let my eyes take in this new message. Not bad. I had succeeded in opening 2 doors in Cinnamon's Labyrinth. No, not bad at all. Capital ZOO and SUB would do it. I clicked on exit and returned to the main menu. Then chose shutdown, which brought up the following options. Record procedures in operations file Y/N. As instructed by Ushikawa, I chose no to avoid leaving a record of the procedures I had just executed. The screen quietly died. I wiped the sweat from my forehead. After checking to be certain that I had left the keyboard and mouse exactly as I had found them, I moved away from the now cold monitor.